Hello there and welcome back to another edition of the Hot Lap Classic Remastered. This time we're taking a look at the 1990 Nissan Skyline GTR Nismo, my personal favourite R32 in the game because it comes with this fantastic BP livery, this yellow and green. You know me, bright colours appeal to me because I'm apparently a toddler, and this one definitely does. Unfortunately, the Nismo, while it's literally called the Nismo, isn't the quickest R32 in the game. All the R32s are relatively similar when it comes to power. They're all just slightly heavier than each other, and the Nismo is very slightly heavier than the standard R32, if memory serves me correctly. So when we see that car go around, that will be quicker than this, or in theory it should be, but we'll see. Four-wheel drive, 646 horsepower, 1,281 kilos. It is quite heavy, it is quite powerful, and it is, well, four-wheel drive. To see how this car's going to get along, we are going to do 6 laps of the Motorsports Land track. Our current leader is the Ford GT90, as we saw last time out, with a 28.180, very slightly beating the Evo 5. Which means, once again, in the remastered Hot Lap Classic, which I don't think ever really happened in the original Hot Lap Classic, we have a four-wheel drive car not on the top of the leaderboard. We actually have a mid-engine rear drive car, which I always say how terrible mid-engine rear drive cars are. In terms of R32s, we have actually had an R32 before. It is currently in 19th place with a 29.612. That was the V-Spec 2 model. So I think this Nismo is lighter than that V-Spec 2, which in theory should help it. Although, as we found out last time, and as I'm finding out this time, these Skylines aren't necessarily the most drivable because they all have Stage 4 turbochargers. And if you haven't watched this series before and you're wondering what a Stage 4 turbo is, let me explain it. Stage 4 turbo in this game is essentially how you make the most power, and of course we're running these cars fully upgraded aside from the gearboxes. The problem with Stage 4 turbo is it makes all of its power is essentially right at the top of the rev range, and if you're not at the top of the rev range, you have massive turbo lag, as you can see when I'm at like 4,000 RPM, and then as soon as I get past about 6.5, it rockets off. That's the problem with the R32, because the gearboxes on the R32, I don't know if it's a particular bad gearbox or anything. It's just, it never really seems. I usually like to drive this track in second gear. That's how most of these cars get driven. And I don't like going into first gear because first gear makes the cars incredibly sort of twitchy and horrible to drive. In a car like this, I'm having to use first gear because that's where, that's how I'm having to try and make power in this thing. And that makes it a lot less of a pleasant experience for me to drive. And you can see, actually, trying to change gear in this thing is an absolute nightmare, to be fair. So there you go. That is the conundrum when it comes down to these R32s. I will try and get a run up on this final lap. Can we go any quicker in the Nismo? I would like to beat that V-Spec 2, although I fear that V-Spec 2 is probably about the peak of what an R32 can do around here, for the reasons as stated. And by the looks of it, yeah, that was a terrible lap. Terrible lap. But that's pretty much about where it should be, to be fair. I mean, that is right around where the V-Spec 2 is. 29.644. I'm sorry, I couldn't. There's definitely time in there. But you'd have to master that gearbox. Maybe in one of the other R32s, I'll be able to do that, but yeah, lap time's all over the place. There's definitely 0.2 in there, definitely, but we run them as they are. 29.644 will put the Nismo R32 into 20th place. It goes just below the other Nissan Skyline GTR we've had, the V-Spec 2. 29.612, this was 29.644. So, yeah, there's they're just not particularly drivable cars. That's the problem. The gearbox in the R33 is better. The R33 also makes more power, which I think means there's a little bit more sort of mid-range in there. We'll have to see how the R34s get along when they come to the track, but yeah, for now, that's where the R32 sits, unfortunately. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. Enjoy me next time when I'll be driving something completely different. Until then, farewell.